What's going on, everybody? I'm Patrick from POWLAX, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys the 4-3 Alpha Clear. So this is a clear that the Duke coaching staff taught last year and that they used very efficiently. We're going to see some video from Duke a little bit later, but more importantly, just the idea of this clear is something that every single high school team should know, and if a 7th, 8th grade team that's pretty good understands this idea, they're never going to have an issue clearing, just because they understand the spacing, they understand the principles that define clearing if they get this, and it'll really make it easy for us to get the ball from our defensive end to the offensive end. If you'd like to download the playbook PDF for this clear to add to your playbook, you can get that at patreon.com/POWLAX by clicking this link up here in the corner. I really appreciate everyone who has become a patron and utilized all these PDFs and really just kind of supported me on my vision of making a ton of great coaching content that will be free on YouTube, and then you get the added bonus of the PDFs when you become a patron. So the first thing we have to cover as it relates to our Alpha Clear is just our clearing principles, and the first thing we have is our breakout. Once we gain possession of the ball, we want all the players to break out and go into some type of formation that will use great spacing so that we can use our 7-on-6 advantage as we start to clear. So the first aspect of our clear that every single team should know, even the youth teams, is to build the base of our clear. And so our goalie right here made a save, but it doesn't matter if the ball was picked up in this corner, even if the ball was picked up here, we always want our defenseman and a goalie to set up the base of our clear. So right here he makes a save. Let's say that this attackman A2 decides he wants to try to play him. Now the goalie has 3.5 seconds before he's got to get out, and he wants to get out away. Now the defensemen want a banana cut, and so we're going to have D2 banana cut to the right, and we're going to have D1 banana cut to the left. And so as they do that, they need to follow these 3 rules. They need to get deep, which means they've got to get low with the goalie. They need to get wide, which is out to the sides, and they need to never lose sight of the ball. Because if the goalie screws something up, which could happen, they need to be in as quickly as they can to try to mitigate any transition for the other team. The next part that we have is our players who are going to go upfield, and we're going to have our players go right into the alpha set, and as they go upfield, the most important thing is that they're aware of if they're open. Because if they're open as they move upfield, we want to get a ball up and out to them and get out early so that we don't actually have to use this alpha clear. The other thing is you can use different formations prior to getting into this 4-3 set, like a diamond or a ladder on this side, so that players will stay in the play and they'll be aware of whether or not they're being played or not. But for this, we're just going to go right into our 4-3 formation. So for this, we're going to have our best handling defenseman. He is going to run a corner route. He's going to come upfield, and he's going to run to this space right here. We don't want him to go over. We want him to stay on sides. Now, M1 and M2, they're going to run fly routes, and they're going to cross the midfield line about 4 to 5 yards across the midline. Now, just remember, as they're doing this, they need to know to be aware of whether they're open or not. Finally, our LSM, he is going to run a corner route to the box side. Now, we don't want him to just sub off. We're going to sub him off, but he needs to be aware, because a lot of times what will happen is as we get into the ride, which is what we're going to cover next, is this offensive midi, he's just booking it off the field, right? And so if the LSM can catch this as he's booking it off the field and as the LSM subs on, we've got a good amount of space here that we might be able to get up and out with, which it's really just they have to be aware. Now, if our LSM does come and the LSM comes on and he's guarded, we're just going to immediately sub him off, and this M4 needs to sub on sides. He has to be on sides because that's going to give us our alpha formation later. Now, as we get into the clear, we're going to use a 2-down windshield wiper ride because it's really going to express exactly how the clearing is going to work. And if a team uses a different type of ride, like a 3-down ride, we're going to have somebody open. If they use a 3-deep zone ride where they drop all the way here, we're still going to have all the looks we have. We're just going to have to get through our walk it up phase first. And then if they're doing maybe it's a lock off everyone but the goalie ride, we'll get to that too, but it's just going to make our walk it up really, really easy. The 2-down windshield wiper ride will actually make it harder, and it'll really show exactly how the whole thing works. So within that 2-down ride, M7 and M8 are going to come and they're going to defend these middies. And then A3 is going to run upfield, and he is going to play against D3. Now, it doesn't matter if this attackman comes to the middies or to the defenseman. He is the person who we are going to exploit, though. Now, before I erase this and just kind of put them in their positions to show the other aspect, there's one huge thing you kind of just got to see automatically, and it's our spacing, right? Each one of these players who are in kind of these different slots, they are going to have their own 12 yards that they can maneuver within and stay wide. And that's so that one player who is riding cannot play two of our clearing players. And that's really going to help us. And if the players can visualize it, it's really going to make us effective as we are doing that. So that's why we use this 4-3 formation. So now we have our players who are all spaced out. We've gotten upfield, and the one thing I'll say about this demonstration is that as the players were going upfield, that's when this next part would have happened. Like, we're not going to have all of this happen, everybody in place while the goalie just still has the ball. So this next part where we're going to walk the ball up, that's going to happen as players are going upfield. So we've got our two attackmen who are down, and let's say the attackman A2 decides he's going to try to run out and play the goalie. Now, we want to use, as we're doing this, we want to use the right communication, right? And so if you're ever trying to tell a player that he should pass the ball, we want to use different terminology to show locations, not the name of the player who he should throw to. And here's the reason. If you yell out that a player should pass to another player's name, he has to still locate that player. When if you use verbiage that demonstrates a specific area of the field or an opportunity, then it's going to be a lot easier for the player to recognize where he should pass the ball. So as he comes over, we could throw to the right or we could throw to the left, and that's what these two players' calls will be. They'll be right or left. So let's say that D2 says right, and G1 throws the ball to D2. Now, we don't want D2 to necessarily run super fast up the field, but he is going to carry up the field. And as that happens, the attackmen are going to play him, and they're going to kind of windshield wiper. Now, as he carries up the field, our other players are going to carry up with him. And so then A2 is going to stay on the goalie as he comes through. Let's use the blue one. And now, once we get up here and D1 stays with him, D1 is going to yell over. And so now D2 is going to throw the ball over the field. And now these attackmen are going to come back up and they're going to ride again, and they're going to get back up to these players as D1 comes up the field. Goalie stays with him. D2 stays with him. Right? And so now we want to get up the field as we are walking it up so that we can make any passes to these upfield players shorter. So as we talk about walking it up, here we're going to see our base working against our windshield wiper ride. The player in the bottom right section of the field has the ball. He's going to immediately throw the ball over to the other side. We're going to kind of carry up a little bit. The attackmen try to ride. We're going to throw the ball back over the field again. The attackmen are still going to try and ride. And now any pass that we're going to make is much shorter. So now that we understand how we're going to break out, which means build the base, get upfield, our formations we're going to use, and how we're going to walk the ball up so that we can have shorter passes, now we're going to talk about our alpha. And the alpha means attackman. And for the most part, teams aren't ever going to match feet, which means they're never going to have their attackman go over the midline. So I'm just going to illustrate one point for you here. Let's say that the attackman decided to guard M1. So now A3 is here, and we'll say that M8 is guarding here. Once this midi gets across and sees that his man is not actually playing him, like he went across midfield and he sees that no one's playing with him, he's going to yell alpha, and then he's going to receive the pass. And so once anyone figures out that the attackman is playing them, they're going to yell alpha, and then if we don't quite know, we are going to figure it out in another way. This is an example from the Duke vs. Air Force game from the beginning of last year, and I really, really like this example for a couple of reasons. First, we've got a midfielder who's trying to carry the ball up through a triple team. Now, Duke, being a very obviously advanced team, one of the best teams in the country at the college level, obviously they should know this, but this is where a lot of high school and youth players get tripped up. is most kids seem to think that they have to run upfield, but they don't. As long as our base is built behind us, we can always throw the ball back. So this player sees that he's being triple teamed, figures it out, and runs away from the triple team and throws it back to his defenseman and to the base. Now we are already walked up, and now we can get into our alpha formation. Now, what I want you to see within this is that this player right here, he realizes right now that he is the alpha. He has the attackman. But the Duke players don't actually see it, even though he could accept an easy pass right now. They don't see it, but we do end up getting up and out anyway using what we're going to talk about next. Now, if we don't get the easy look of an attackman's guarding a midi who's over the midline, so we obviously hit that midi, now what we're going to do is we are going to run a simple rotation and we are going to exploit a 4-on-3. So our 4-on-3 goes like this. Whichever side the ball is on, that player is going to go over the midline. And so now blue has their only 3 players over the midline. And so what we're going to do is, once we see that their 3 players are over, that pretty much tells us that this player is defended by an attackman as long as they're not matching feet, but we'll go into that a little later. But so, once we see that, now we are going to throw our overpass. And so whichever side the ball is on, that wing player, that side player here, is going to go over the midline. So D1 will throw the ball over to D2. At this point, D3 should have been yelling alpha. D3 is going to come over the field. And now M4 has to get back on sides. And now what we're going to see is our 4 players are going to have to be defended by their 3. So M8 is going to bump over, M7 is going to have to bump over, and the LSM is going to have to bump over in order to account for this advantage that we see here. And this is also why we want D3 he's the best defensive pull who can carry the ball. But so D2 is going to throw the ball up and over to D3. And now we are out and these players are rotating over. So this whole alpha idea where we're going to play the 4v3 by moving one of our players over the midline and then back is really the lifeblood of how this actually works. So we're going to show 3 examples. The first example is from our playoff game against Kent a couple years ago. And so what we're going to see is a very basic understanding of the alpha principle happening very early. So we start with the ball in the back right corner. We throw an easy overpass, and then right as we begin the clear, the alpha is already over and open, so this player throws it up and over to him, and we're out. We've successfully cleared. In this next example of the Duke Air Force game, the goalie makes a save, throws it out to the right side. The defenseman walks it up. There's no pressure, so no need to move the ball. Now we see that we have 3 players over the midline to start, and we see that our far side player is going to get back on sides, and that's going to release our player on the box side. So now we're going to move the ball over, and now we're going to throw up over to the alpha, catch the ball, and now Duke is into their offensive possession. Now this example is another one that I like a lot because it shows how we're going to roll away from pressure and really use our base to walk the ball up the field. So the goalie has the ball behind, he's being pressured, he throws it off to the defenseman. Now the defenseman is being pressured, so he rolls away, throws back to the goalie, and now we get to calmly walk the ball up the field. Now the Air Force players decide they're going to jump, and now we've already got our 2 midfielders over, our far side midfielder comes back, and now the ball is thrown straight up to the alpha, who then carries in the same fashion as the last example. Now that we kind of got the alpha idea where we're going to have either side that the ball is on, we're going to come over the field. Now we're going to talk about our dragons. And dragon basically means drag, players who are going to drag across the field. And this is why. So let's say that we don't hit this pass. Let's say we don't want to throw it because we think that this attackman is going to knock it down. We really just want to have a better pass. So as D3 gets over the field and it looks like we might pass to him and these players all start to shift, M1 and M2 are going to have space that they can fill into as these players rotate. So as M8 leaves him so that he tries to go to D3, we're going to have this nice little bit of space that these players are going to drag into. And now D2 can find either M1 or M2 as they drag across the field. This is another example that I like again because our midfielder throws back to our defenseman and we clear as a team rather than having him try and run through 2. So now as we freeze it right here, we see our 4 across. Our 2 middies are over and our 2 other players are both on sides. Now, they are being defended by these three players, the two who you can see and then another that you can't. And so now as we try to swing the ball, those players are going to have to rotate in space, which is going to give our players in the middle space. So as the ball is thrown back to the goalie, those players have to rotate, and now we get an easy pass up through the middle to our Dragon, who is then into the offensive end. So now, what do we do if this doesn't work? And so we try to exchange both sides, and no one seems to be defended by the attackman because the other team is matching feet. And so as that happens, what we're going to see is once the ball comes over, instead of having any rotation where we're going to have Dragons or any of that, as D3 steps over the field, the LSM and M4 are going to get on sides again. And so now A3 is able to defend D3 once he's up in space here. So now the biggest key to this is if we don't see a Dragon and we don't see an Alpha, we know that they're matching feet once we've had this overpass. And so from here, if we recognize, we should have some kind of call. Our call is match feet. Because if they start screaming match feet, our players will understand that they're matching feet. And so our match feet call is, now we've got to run it over. So once D2 catches this ball, he should have been hearing match feet, and these attackmen are going to now start to ride over there. So our job is, D2's job, is to try to beat A1 over the midline. Now, from this spot, we've got a little bit of a predicament. We already have three players who are over the midline. And from this spot, we can't have D2 just run over. So there's two ways we can do it. This one I don't like as much because it takes too much training for too many middies, right? If we see this, M2 could just get back on sides, D3 could get deep, and D2 can carry over, and that would work pretty well, right? But I really don't like it. It just adds too much complexity to this. Instead, what I like to have happen is I like for D3 to recognize that he's over, that he's got the defenseman coming to him, and he is just going to kind of banana into the middle of the field and get back on sides. And what we're going to do here is we're still going to isolate this attackman. So in the event that this attackman sees D2 running at him and kind of comes back to him, D2 is going to pass the ball over to D3 when he's over the midline, right? If A3 decides to stay with him the whole time, we're not even going to have him pass it, and D2 is just going to run over the midline, and now we actually could get transition going up the side. So you basically just manipulate this player here, and hopefully you've kind of gotten beyond these attackmen, because this 20 yards isn't anything compared to what this attackman should have to run. And so once we have them over, hopefully we got either A1 or A3 on the defensive side of the field, and now we are running our offense against one of their attackmen, which I really, really enjoy doing. So if they decide to match feet, we can run one of their attackmen over, and we can dodge on their attackman. So the final thing that we're going to cover here is if the other team decides to go into a goalie ride, which a goalie ride for me is that basically they're going to lock off everybody but the goalie. So to start, this is going to make things really easy for us to get into our walk it up position, right? Because if they're just going to lock everybody off, the goalie can just walk it up. And so it's extremely important that our goalies are in our passing drills, and so they feel comfortable just controlling the ball and walking it up the field. Like it's something that some teams just totally don't focus on, and their goalies are off doing nothing while everyone else is in a passing drill. The goalie should be in the passing drills as much as possible. So as he walks it up, now we don't have the side to side to send one of our players over. So basically what we're going to have is these two just have to communicate. If he knows that they're not matching feet and he yells alpha because he knows he's defended by the attackman, all he's going to do is he's just going to step over. The attackman won't follow him, and he's going to pass it up and out to that side. Now, if the attackman goes with him, he's now going to get back on sides. We're going to send M4 over, and hopefully M4 will have the attackman on him here. Once again, if the attackmen are defending the midfielders, we should be able to see that pretty easily. In this example, we're going to see our goalie ride where they're going to lock off everyone but the goalie. So what we immediately do is we get the ball to the goalie, and the goalie's just going to walk it up. Take his time. He's good. There's no pressure. And now, as you can see here, we step our defenseman over. He is completely wide open. We can easily throw it up over to him. But in this instance, our attackman felt like he had to do way too much. He comes running upfield. He does get the ball. He ends up taking a bad shot at the end of this. But notice how once the defenseman stepped over, we were already good. We were already out. We did not need this attackman to come up into the play. Everything was going to work out regardless. Now, if none of this happens well, the goalie is going to have to carry over the midline. And so once the middies here start seeing this goalie come at them, they need to get out of the way to either side. And as the goalie steps over, we're going to have either A3 here, most likely the LSM is going to have to run in and defend him. And as that happens, one of these players, M2 and M1, have to pop open so that we can try to get the ball out of the goalie's hands to get the ball. Now, I've seen a lot of goalie goals, and this is when it happens most, right? So if you've got a goalie who can carry the ball efficiently, if they decide to lock everybody off, we want this goalie to run and go to the goal, because if he can get here while the LSM is still locking, there's no way the LSM is going to catch a quick kid who's going up through. So this is actually the first goalie goal that I ever got to see live, and just notice how every single other riding player, other than the player who's chasing him right now, doesn't really acknowledge that he's a threat. So that as he runs it over the midline, there's no one who's even going to slide to him, and he gets inside and he scores a great goal. Also, if your goalie does carry over, I recommend using a give and go, not having him try to get through people. Once he moves it, have him cut the middle, and he can finish just like this. This is an example from the second half of a game that we played last fall, where the other team was doing this goalie ride. And so we actually get two kind of give and go plays here because they didn't quite react exactly how they were in the first half. But so the goalie ends up carrying over after getting a pass. And as he carries in, he's not just going to move the ball and leave. He passes across, everyone looks away, he gets a feed inside, and he buries it top right. Definitely one of the cooler moments of the fall. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you'd like to download the playbook PDF for this clear, you can get that at patreon.com/POWLAX by clicking this link up here in the corner and becoming a patron. I really hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Have a good one. Good luck this season, and I will see you guys in the next video.